Good evening. Welcome to MUFON Los Angeles. My name is Steve Murillo. I am the State Section Director for MUFON LA. We've got a very interesting presentation that's a little bit off the UFO topic, but actually related in many ways. The Bimini Road, the quest for Atlantis. Archaeologist Bill Donato earned his master's degree at Cal State Fullerton with the thesis called A Re-Examination of the Atlantis Theory. The controversial document was a comprehensive survey and multidisciplinary analysis of the Atlantis premise, synthesizing data from anthropology, archaeology, biology, geology that indicates possible catastrophism. Bill has continued to pursue relevant field work in an attempt to unravel the mystery of Atlantis, focusing on the Bahamas, where unusual geologic formations in the area of the Bimini Islands display possible evidence of human-made structures. We have a few of those. He's brought a few of those with him. Fortean enthusiasts will also recall that the sleeping prophet Edgar Cayce had predicted decades ago that the Bimini Islands would provide just such evidence of Atlantis. So Bill's investigations are very exciting to us indeed. Among the findings of his research begun in 1974 are a variety of unusual mounds in the shapes of various animals. These were discovered with the use of aerial infrared photography, sonar, and on-site investigation. Additional area anomalies are an underwater feature resembling the Pentagon or a pentagon, and another in the image of a hexagon. In 1993, Bill began Project Alta, which has completed a comprehensive side scan sonar survey, aerial surveys, dives, and submarine excursions. On-site visual examination led to the discovery of some man-made features on what has come to be known as the Bimini Road. The most recent discoveries of Bill's team include stone anchors, possible remnants of a stone pier, all indications of a possible lost civilization. So with that, I'd like you all to put your hands together and give a warm welcome to Bill Donato.
In all humility, it was not you guys worth waiting an hour and a half for me. I actually did my master's thesis. I was going to do it on Bimini, but then they wanted me to do something more expansive. So they said I could do it on a theory, so we did the Atlantis thing. I got an A on it. It was about 300 and something pages, which was 6 times longer than it had to be. And my professors got interested in it. In a general sense, I've always been interested in ancient civilizations, the possibility that there were high civilizations in the past. I'm going to kind of go through quickly part of the outline here. Of course, everybody's familiar with the chariots of the gods and all that. About 2 years ago, I started thinking about the traditional Atlantis story that occurs in Plato. In that particular one, I started thinking about the temple, where they have the image of Poseidon in a chariot drawn by winged horses. And I was thinking, like, why would a sea god have winged horses? The idea of chariots of the gods, of course, came to mind that maybe this had to do with a flying vehicle. Edgar Cayce's origin has to do with projection of mind and of spirit into body and so on. And the modification by aliens doesn't necessarily come across in the readings, but there is very specific readings of aliens. He mentions a second influx of souls into Atlantis from different spheres or whatever. He specifically mentions them in Yucatan toward the time just before the conquest, where he says those were coming from other sources or worlds in flying machines. So there's clearly something connecting that. Now there's a lot of traditions. You're all familiar probably with the Sitchin, the Anunnaki, and so on. I'm going to try to go through this kind of quickly. The Beniha Elohim in the Bible, of course, and then the descendants of them, which is almost identical in, what's his name? Atlantis, the Antediluvian World author, had noted that there's a... Donnelly, yes, Donnelly, sorry. Donnelly had noted the similarities to the Bible account with the Plato's Atlantis account, where one of these divine beings marries one of the mortals, and they have a race of semi-divine beings who become interesting. Most people, when they think of Atlantis, they think of it kind of in the context of Sodom and Gomorrah, something that's destroyed for its evil, but according to both the Platonic account and Edgar Cayce's, it was hardly that. There were problems, to be sure, but according to him, it lasted roughly 200,000 years, which would be basically the beginning of Homo sapiens. His first of the human types of our kind was Emilius, who appeared roughly 210,000 years, and it turns out, if you look at the not haplogroups, the mitochondrial DNA, that you have the mitochondrial atom at 240 and the mitochondrial Eve at about 180, so they kind of merge into that particular time framework. It indicates there were 3 periods of destruction, which at the second one there were 5 islands, and this kind of ties into some of the American Indian traditions. There are certain things that are stated about Atlantis which are just wrong. That there's no room in the Atlantic. Well, number one, there's plenty of room in the Atlantic. Most people don't realize that before the melting of the glaciers, that sea levels worldwide were at least 300 to 400 feet lower. I don't know what the height is right here, but if it did that right now, we'd be several hundred feet underwater. We've had a modification in the last couple of years due to another researcher. We thought we'd have to look down at 320 feet or so, and it turns out that we only have to go 110 feet, because that's what it was around 9,600. For those that are really into it, it's 9,564 according to some. Cesare Emiliani did an analysis of foraminifera. It's a small marine organism that walks a record of salinity and temperature. He found that there was a major change where the salinity went less 11,600 years ago. If you take off 2,000 years, and it's 9,600, the time Plato indicates. So there was freshwater flooding at that particular time. Getting to the Indian stories that seem to relate to this, there's a very interesting one which actually ties in with aliens, and that's the Cherokee story. This is in a book called Voices of Our Ancestors by Diana Uwahu. She is one of the traditional Cherokee keepers of the traditions. And according to that story, Tla beings, T-L-A, which means thought, had come from the direction of the Pleiades, and they intermarried people in the Americas, the children of the sun, and on 5 islands in the Atlantic. At Casey's second destruction, there are 5 islands in the Atlantic named Poseidia, Arion, Og, Latinia, and Eisen, most of which deals with Poseidia, which was the greater activity. From a geological perspective, the Bahamas are in fact a microcontinent. Heason and Ewing had found Caribbean granite. Everybody keeps saying Caribbean. It's actually in the Atlantic. The Caribbean is next to it. And their opinion had been that it was either a continent in formation or an ancient one, and they favored an ancient one. When I was doing my thesis in the 70s, there was a theory that there was granite under there. Now they know there is, and there's about 15,000 feet of carbonate platform. Let's see. Okay, the Hopi story you're probably a bit familiar with also, and it specifically mentions things of a high-tech order. The first world, basically the Kopabi, the door at the top of the head, which we'd call the crown chakra or the Sahasrara chakra, was supposedly open from a person. There was no bony covering for their entire life. And they kept their accord with God and the animals through that. Someone they called the big-headed serpent comes among them, tells there's a difference, there's war, and some of the people go underground, and the world becomes a ball of flame, suggesting either volcanic activity or asteroids or something like that. Second world, they still have this opening. They started building roadways between their villages. Commerce becomes more important, so again, the good people go underground. This time, they indicate something of an astronomical order. They say the world turned over twice and became a frozen ball of ice. The third world gets real interesting. In this one, it hardens over just like it does in us, and this may have to do with why there was this internal impetus to create things and so on. They call this world Cuscurza, which has no particular meaning in the Hopi language. Now, according to the stories, this third world, they developed civilization very rapidly and a flying vehicle called the Patuvota, P-A-T-U-V-W-O-T-A, which in their language means flying shield or water shield. And according to them, several people start attacking each other, and eventually the world becomes so decadent that it's destroyed. But one of the things associated with this is that the people at that time used their creative power to melt the ice at the top of the world. And this kind of goes in together. You see the disappearance of, or the modification of the Gulf Stream, where Europe, which had been a frozen wasteland except around the Mediterranean, all of a sudden heats up. And this occurs roughly the 10th millennium BC. There's also other interesting stories if you want to get more to the technological aspects. The god Thoth in the Egyptian also is the equivalent of Hermes. He supposedly comes from a place called the Island of Flame, which was in the Atlantic and who brought the knowledge of civilization and so on. The Berbers have a story that's almost identical to this, about their ancestors coming from a place that had libraries and the whole place was destroyed in volcanic upheaval. let's see. There's a more interesting story about Horus, who is one of the major gods among the Egyptians. And it's in a book on Egyptian mythology that I came across. It has him riding on his Uraeus disc, flying on it, and spitting fire at the enemy, suggesting aircrafts. And most of you are probably familiar with the Vimanika Shastras, especially the Mercury Vimana, which I was really interested in a long time ago and did experiment, probably handled way too much mercury. So if I'm crazy, I got a reason for it. And I began to think about this. Actually, there's some other technologies which are kind of similar. I don't know if anybody's familiar with the ionocraft of de Seversky, but one of the things that it would have been powered by is a mercury turbine. I was thinking of this and a phenomenon that was noted by Ivan T. Sanderson in Invisible Residence, that if you heated the mercury under a little ceramic dish and went in a circle, it would stop going in another circle, but then it would start going faster. If somebody had noted this particular effect, just fooling around with it, they may have been able to create something kind of interesting, a fluid rotor mercury turbine that would move air around like a turbojet. It says that it develops power with the roar of a lion and becomes like a pearl in the sky and a driving whirlwind are terms that they use. We seem to have a problem accepting that there's any high technology unless we've done it first. Even though certain types of technology like lighter than aircraft with balloons was done in Peru not too long ago in the 90s with a balloon called the Condor using only the technology available to those people. We also, this one can go in any context you want to, that people think that the most advanced people living are now, and that's just not the case. A classic Cro-Magnon actually has a bigger brain capacity than most modern humans, and they apparently are developed to warmer climates. One of the more interesting ones was an Azilian character from Tardit, believed to be like a predecessor of the Mediterranean. Some of his characteristics were ultra-human. Had a higher than normal vault to the cranium. The genial tubercles through which your tongue connects was actually more advanced. The intriguing thing was the pilaster of the thigh bones was following a particular direction, which is advanced, but it isn't the one that the Europeans followed. Turned out that it's common in the Canary Islands and in the Andes Mountains instead. Possible survival of Atlantis. The more interesting one is a group of people that are referred to by three different names, the Mouyans, M-O-U-I-L-L-I-A-N-S, or the Ibero-Mauritians, or the Oranians after the site of Oran. These people were regarded by Carlton S. Kuhn, an expert in that, as being identical to the people in the Canary Islands. They're tall and they have the largest brain capacity of anybody that's ever lived, 2,000 cubic centimeters, virtually 1/4 larger than any modern humans. The conventional explanation is that they look like a people in southeastern Spain, so they thought that even though you can see across the Straits of Gibraltar, that these people had to walk around the entire periphery of the Mediterranean, the Levant, Egypt, all these places to get here, which is just stupid. There's even Azilian and Cro-Magnon remains of deep-sea fish that implied boats. It's even believed that Homo erectus had boats and rafts of some kind. That's the only way they could have gotten to parts of Southeast Asia. One thing about traditions. A friend of mine, late Vincent Mooney, had told me of one from Australia. Now, the Australian Aborigines have interesting culture, but with regard to sophistication, they're not even close to the Egyptians or the Greeks. They had a story that a particular location, and this was actually uncovered by a geologist, had once had a pretty nice, almost paradisical component, and then there was a taboo that was broken, and when it was broken, there was immense devastation, which was interpreted as a volcanic upheaval. It turned out that was exactly right. It occurred in 10,000 BC, so it had an oral tradition that was virtually 12,000 years old. With regard to changes in land masses, I found something which I've never seen anywhere, and that was at the Cal State Fullerton Library. It was 2 elevation changes off the Congo Basin in the Atlantic Ocean of 12,500 feet within a 5,000-year period. It rose up 12,000 feet and went right back down, almost as if it may have been counterbalancing something. Let's see. Aside from the sea levels rising, what some people don't realize is that the Bahamas was entirely out of water. It was not little islands, it was thousands of square miles, a lot bigger than Crete. The Indians there, the Lucayans, mentioned it was once bigger and it was encompassed by the arms of the sea. People wrongly state that only people that have read or know of Plato indicate Atlantis. Well, for one thing, we're not even sure whether the name is accurate because it's a Greek version supposedly meaning daughter of Atlas. And the Atlantic Ocean is named after the Atlantis, not the other way around. It's more likely that a language from the other side of the world, the Uto-Aztecan, is where the name comes from. When I was in the upper division anthropological linguistics master's level course, They brought up an interesting fact that the Uto-Aztecan languages are believed to have split apart in 10,000 BC in the American Southwest. In that language, the word atl means water, tlan means place, and they use a agglutinated language, so they put together, so it's atlan, so you get something very close. There are many Native American accounts of coming from the sea and almost none from coming down from the north. The Mayans state categorically that the greater descent from the Pacific and the lesser descent from the Atlantic. Of course, the name Aztlan is probably a variation of this also. Let's see. One of the more recent and important things we owe directly to Doctors Gregory and Laura Little, and they were studying haplogroups, which is something related to mitochondrial DNA. There's actually two that are quite interesting. B, if you're interested in Mu, Lemuria, or whatever, which correlates to people that would have been related to them in the Southwest and in the newest, or actually the oldest sites in South America and the entire Pacific Ocean. The haplogroup X was unusual. They thought it was European. They called it X because they didn't know who. Then they found it in American Indians. They thought, well, it's admixture. Then they found it in really old American Indians from 2000 BC, mound builders. And then they found it in a bunch of very interesting people, the Guanches of the Canary Islands, the Basque people of the Pyrenees, the Berbers in Morocco, Italians, Egyptians, Jews, Phoenicians, and especially in a group called the Druzes, where there were several versions, and who also, they claim to be descended from Jethro of Midian, and they use a 5-pointed star as their symbol, believe in reincarnation. You could never join their religion because in a past life, they believe that you may have chosen wrong, and now you have to work out your own salvation. So you can't join the religion. They're not even looking for you. And they speak specifically of the destructions of Atlantis and of Gomorrah, presumably Sodom and Gomorrah. They have more of this haplogroup X than anybody else. Somebody said, well, the stuff that we're finding in Bimini is probably Carthaginian or Phoenician. Well, that wouldn't be a problem. For one thing, they have the correct haplogroup to be associated with the Atlanteans. The Iroquois, Cherokee, who are the same people, have it. The mound builders had it. And there's timelines, which are really very much associated with this. There were changes in 10,000 BC. Oh, I'm sorry, 28,000 BC, 10,000 BC, and 2,000 BC. The 28,000 would have been the time of the second destruction, supposedly, or some major change. 10,000, of course, the final destruction, and then the mound builder group in the 2000. So this is a major new development. I had an interesting thing happen when I was first in May of 2005. Greg Little had seen some things I had done. He actually read my reports, which is interesting because they're long and profusely photographed, like 200 photos and stuff. And one of the pictures I had was on the Bimini Road, which was of a wedge-shaped thing, which was a leveling stone. And we got real interested. We tried to find that the first year, couldn't find that one. We found other ones. Went to Andros, where there's another site. So right now, if you can see this, I don't know if you can. Yeah, this is really small, but basically what you're seeing, well, first off, okay, this is from Creighton's book, History of the Bahamas. This is what it looked like in the Bahamas in basically 14,000 BC, with all this area is being dry land. You can see how really close this is to Cuba. And of course, the Cuba site has gotten very interesting because it's 2,100 feet down. There's a volcano near there, remnants of a fault, and a stream that was above the water. And actually, there was a land bridge that would have gone over here down to Yucatan. It's almost directly in the middle. At first, we thought it could have been things like boxcars, but it doesn't look like that now. It looks like it may actually be artifactual. The Cuban government was actually doing pretty good for a while, and now they're like the ones that are being the roadblock to doing any further research, and they're estimating like $2 or so million even to get moving again. So it's been stopped for the most part. Anyway, this would have been the area Casey called Poseidia. This is the Grand Bahama Bank, the Little Bahama Bank, and this right here is Quesal, where there is also stuff at all these areas. Cat Island over here, one of the more interesting areas. Bimini up here, Andros right here, Anguilla Cay, and actually up here near Land's End, it looks like we have remnants of a maritime culture. Now, whether this is directly associated with Atlantis is problematical, but what does seem associated with it is the things that we had in '98. Actually, this shows it right here a little bit better. Andros. This is, by the way, 6,000 feet deep right here, and here you're lucky if it's 30 feet deep. Bimini way up here, and the Anguilla Arc right here at, which is what I do, but it's on the Quesal Bank, and they kept screwing it up on the program. I don't know if you saw Josh Berenstein on Digging for the Truth, which was mainly digging for conventionality. It was kind of funny to me because the guy who was an associate of Shin, and I'll go into the controversy and we'll get into that, was there on the program with him. Seems like a really nice, mellow guy, but Shin was totally wrong on everything. And now we know that he was wrong on everything. He even lied in the article that was in Nature magazine, and we can prove that. And had to do with corings that he took. He did pretty good corings. Zink said they weren't so good because they didn't go down an angle, but they looked pretty good to me when we finally found them last year. They were 2-inch corings. Here's the controversy of the Bimini Road. It was discovered in 1968 near Bimini. Casey mentioned some things would have happened in 68. It doesn't necessarily mean that it itself was associated, but it certainly drew the attention to people there, and also at Andros. Initially, it was found by Manson Valentine. It would have been discovered by Dmitry Rebekov, except he had an accident where his leg got cut up with a propeller, so that kind of stopped that. Dmitry Rebekov, for those of you who don't know, was the head of the Rebekov Institute, and he was on a level with Cousteau. It turns out that the things that he stated about the Bimini Road were exactly true. The amazing thing is it took 30 years for people just to look at it. Now, I had my training here where we don't generally study Mediterranean marine archaeology. You study like the Southwest or something like that. So didn't really know what to look for. Now we realize, oh yeah, we saw this, and this. The anchors themselves that we found go over a period from at least 30 AD to 1380 AD. That last one is one I found. You'll see a picture in the last row, which has about 5 holes. The bigger, better ones are the older ones. They may be a lot older. They were all within 15 feet of each other. There were at least 3 of these anchors, so it's just amazing. On a place called Proctor's Road. The Bimini Road controversy is, these guys say that it is nothing but Pleistocene beach rock. There's a real problem there. Even Eugene Shin, who wrote that it was some kind of a hoax thing, had said that that's all it was. And it was only 1 layer, which is also wrong. The place he took the corings at is 1 layer. The other places are 2 and 3 layers. The J, we now know, is a breakwater, like you have in harbors. It's virtually identical to some in the Mediterranean, but here's the cool part. It may be older than all the ones in the Mediterranean. We don't know how old it is. It could theoretically be as old as 10,000 years, but it's not likely because of where it's at. Depth, if you're trying to correspond that with antiquity, something about 30 feet would be more interesting. So this was actually closer to the top of a mountain at one time. And you see that when you go down the submarine. I've gone down on 2 dives there and 1 a little bit to the south. And things that you would not think about, or I didn't, later on came to have a whole lot of meaning because the things that we were seeing at 110 feet, which would definitely be in the 10,000 BC period, indicate that there were some things there. In 98, we had an amazing thing, but let me finish this first before I get too far off. Bimini Road. First off, Dr. David Zink with the Virginia Polytechnic, they did neutron activation analysis, study of the land, which you should have, the sea bottom, and the Bimini Road. There was one major difference with the Bimini Road. It had less of the trace elements, as if it had been above the water and hadn't had it circulating. One of his people, an archaeologist I think, had noticed that there were furrow spacings of 2 specific mathematical patterns on the road which were not present in the other one. We know right now that there are different stones that are from different areas. It's mainly limestone, but there is granite, and one of the major discoveries was something called biosparite, which is in effect marble. That is not native to Bimini. Anyway, so we had all these particular things I don't want to go through about now because it takes a long time to read what was going on. There are stones that have tenons and mortises on them, and they're unusual ones. You'll see a couple here. One of them is kind of a paraboloid triangle that goes deeper into the center as if it was meant to slide in and out. I've never seen that anywhere. I told Greg all we have to do is prove that it's archaeological, because then that destroys our whole argument. All we have to then find is antiquity, and we think we have it. When you see the patterns on the road, you'll know what I understand. I discovered a new site as recently as June, and we call it the Paradise Point Pier, and it's related to a dream I had way back in middle 70s. It is definitely as artificial as the Bimini Road, has the same style, and this last November when I was there, we found several anchors, which I have here. They're actually kind of crude stone anchors, and a cut stone fragment which has a mortise on it. So whoever these people were, they did a lot of mortising and tenoning because you don't have to use cement. In 1998, we did side scan sonar on the west side of Bimini, and we got some really intriguing targets. We had one that we thought was like a pyramid. It turned out it was just the way we were viewing it was just wrong. It was just a shadow. Actually, I found that out one. The other one, I think, here somewhere. This is kind of an enlargement of some of the things you might have. It'd be very difficult to see from there, but anybody wants to come up and take a look at it, they can. I was going to have an opaque projector, but what we have here is imagery that looks a whole lot like structures, especially if you look right down here. Okay, you want to hold that? Yeah. Perfect. That works great. Okay. Okay, if you take a look here, there are square shadows right here. When I called marine sonics, they said that meant they were hard targets. Those are rectilinear shadows. Okay. Okay, right up here we have two post-Lentil systems, and they actually the thing is that every one of these that look like architecture are proportionate to human architecture and style. They're like 12 feet high. And it appears like a little roof here with two columns and stairs. And the more interesting one is actually, you can get the angle right here, which appears to be a tiered thing. Now the angle is like when a kid has a flashlight, you know, under their face and they get all these weird things. But when you measure this, because you can measure this in 3 different formats, it turns out this gets bigger and bigger and bigger, like a step pyramid type feature. So the next year we went back to look for this stuff, and then we found out later, after spending $15,000, that the GPS was off. That was during the Kosovo War and all that stuff. That's why it became extremely important this last time. We got a total of $45,000, which still left about $6,000, which guess who gets to pay. And what happened was when Ocean Technologies people who are expert in this, one of their people had found that we were 1/3 of a mile off at least. So I drew grids to do this particular area, and the first day I got there, they said they got stuff that looked good. That right there proved that it wasn't a side scan error. What they had picked up was rectilinear formation standing at least 1 to 2 meters off the ocean floor. So we went out to investigate, and they gave us GPS and didn't find anything. They said it was 80 to 90 feet. We were 96 feet down and didn't see it. So the next day, they correlated our GPS with theirs, and this is a really critical thing. Underwater, 100 feet is a really long distance. You know, you need to know where you're at. On this type of system, every pixel has a GPS point. So the next day we went down, and Krista and her husband, who were the boat people, he went down the water. He said he saw a square stone figure, and he spent about 20 minutes trying to get in, because we were a fair distance, like a mile off the shore. And again, it's supposed to be 80, 90 feet. No, it was 120 feet, deepest dive I've ever done. And we go down there, and we get to an interesting area that's like a 45-degree angle and maybe this high, almost like a basal plane or something. And there was coral heads at different spacing, almost like it was equilateral, like maybe stuff's growing on it. And I do think that some of the coral things we see in the Bahamas may be artifacts with things growing over them, especially at Cat Island, to the other side. So right about then, something unusual happened. I realized my regulator's not working too good. The air was not coming in under the pressure it needed to, and I think, okay, I can either swim or breathe, but I can't do both at the same time. Really hard to do both of those. So I went over to the line, and I realized I'm going down, put a puff of air, and accidentally my hand goes off of the rope, which is a really bad idea. I'm heading upside down, my fins touch the top of the water, and talk to Esley there, and I say, should I go back down? He goes, no, we'll just have a long interval. We were only down there for 3 minutes, so it kind of screwed up. We were going to do a drift dive to try to locate these things, but we appeared to be in the right area. That was one of the things. Later on, off of South Bimini, they also picked up things which the people doing the scanning thought was artifactual. Now, there is modern stuff there, too. And we know that there had been, from one of our submarine things, that there had actually been a waterfall that had come out from Bimini in ancient times between the two places, which would have fallen something like 300 feet. The more interesting thing, and the biggest surprise and the best one, was what happened with the sub-bottom profiling on the eastern side of Bimini, which is really shallow. The thing here is that it's too shallow. It gets like less than 6 feet. There's a feature which I think is in the slides here, and we call this area East Side. It's kind of between East Bimini and South Bimini. And it's shaped like a rectangle, but it's vegetation which is doing it. There's also features shaped like Pentagon south of Bimini. And I had a theory about what would cause this, since it is vegetation, but it's been persistent for decades at least. I thought, well, it could be either a freshwater source coming up, which turned out to be correct. Though we thought first it might be the thermal gradient was altered and it was like providing more energy to the system. That wasn't true. The radiation component probably wasn't, and the idea of a different chemistry. So they had the sub-bottom profiling, went through a different depths and going across it and across it and across it. And this rectangle is 1/4 by 1/2 mile in size, so it's a pretty big area. What they found was, and Jonathan Eagle and I had been there a couple years earlier, the sand was really weird. It was almost like quicksand. It was like very super saturated with water, and there's a reason it was. They found out there was absolutely no strata there. It is as if this strata had all been removed. Now, the sub-bottom profiling can actually go down roughly 55 feet into the ocean floor. They were able to go down 20 feet, and if that's the level where it is, that is significantly beyond 10,000 BC, and it would have implications that this was constructed by humans a long, long time ago that had a massive labor force. It would have formed, in effect, a reservoir, which is exactly what it looks like from above. Turned out that Jonathan Eagle's satellite photos, which were done through the ARE, showed straight lines that appeared to be going in that same direction. And when he went in the water, he found that the water was actually hotter at the bottom, like 90 degrees below this stuff. So there may be actual strata removed there also. So there does seem to be something that is happening geologically there. Casey had indicated that if they did a geological survey in the Gulf Stream between the Bimini area, that they would find proof of Atlantis. Well, it turns out we were having a phone conference with Mitchell Bell of Applied Geographic Science. He just happens to bring up and talking. He says that geologists were interested in that area because there was a rapid tearing down and building up of material. Whether something sinks or the sea level rise, the effect is substantially the same. You're underwater. There have been some geological activities which have tilted the Bahamas platform. You may have heard of the stalactites, stalagmites that are underwater at an angle in parts of the Caribbean, which basically correspond to about the 10,000 BC time. So geologically, we're on pretty firm ground. The Blake Plateau is directly opposite the eastern seaboard of America, and Casey said that it had been part of the lowlands of Atlantis and at a time when the Mississippi was underwater, and this probably is correct. Blake Plateau is again like the Bahamas. The biggest thing about this is, of course, is that some of you heard of what they call the Hall of Records. According to Casey, when the people of Atlantis were leaving, they built 3 of them, one which they kept at the homeland in Poseidia, which is supposedly in the area near where Bimini is. The other in Yucatan at a site which we've determined is Piedras Negras, which has now been found to be older than they thought. The intriguing thing is that both the Littles and I, through different reasoning, came to the same conclusion as to where this stuff probably is buried. And the other is the very hard to get to Giza Plateau. I talked to Robert Schock in the early 90s. Dr. Zink had told me what he said at the Geological Society here in LA. They had done acoustic soundings in front of the Great Pyramid and found, I think it was down like 30, 60 feet or something like that, that there were air spaces in front of the Sphinx at this deep level. Now they've also found there are some very large caves that are between some of the other ones. Even more interesting, I don't know how many of you take National Geographic, but a couple of years ago it had a picture of the Sphinx and says, how old is it? Well, they dated part of it based on one astronomical correlation. A friend of mine who is a air traffic controller and has a good program in astroarchaeology found the problems that Bouval had with Egypt before he admitted he had a problem with it, and found a very interesting correlation with the Great Pyramid, the 2 air shafts to the north and the 2 to the south. He is thinking like, he was doing the Casey period and see if there was anything unusual, and there really was. I think it was 10,500 BC. The 2 northern shafts aligned with a 0.0 star and a 3.5 magnitude star. And exactly that same time, the 2 southern ones aligned with a 0.0 and a 3.5 magnitude star. The stars are Vega, Alpha Centauri, Iota Hercules, and the 4th one, which I always forget. But the likelihood of this occurring by accident is almost literally astronomically remote. He had similar dates at Abydos, the Osirian, around 7500 BC with astronomical data. The likelihood, again, that this is an accident or just ridiculous. I mean, 4 correlations that correspond to a specific time frame. It meant that the people that did this knew about relative luminosity of stars, which is certainly not a primitive characteristic, it's an advanced characteristic. The Mayan numerical system is, in my opinion, a direct descendant of the Atlantean system. It has a perfection in it which no other system has. I don't know how many are familiar, but basically a dot represents 1. Probably somebody got the idea like this, and then 2, 3, 4, and a straight line is 5, so it's probably the side of the hand. It's extremely well adapted to doing a Chisenbach type finger calculation. A Mexican researcher found it's better adapted to computers. And since it's base 20, which is better than base 10 anyway, you have commonly divisible factors 1, 2, 4, 5, and 10. But the intriguing thing, if you convert it to our system, and you take off the zeros going from 1 to 20 to 400, 8,000, you get 1, 2, 4, 8 in a pure binary progression. That this could have happened by accident is really remote. I'm going to go over to our more recent stuff. I mentioned probably the biggest discovery. I'm still waiting for the things, but quite literally, this particular stuff that had to do with the sub-bottom profiling at the east side with the rectangle is probably the key. So far, there have been 2 and probably 3 sites that were discovered because of unusual dreams I had, one of which is the Paradise Point Pair. There's going to be several slides right here, and we should probably get into that because there's a lot here, and we might want to skip a few of these boxes too. So, this one right here was actually in 1989. This thing right here probably was an artifact. I don't think you can actually see it, but there's feedback. There were some features pictures on here look like they were very crude pictures because, like I say, this area has many cultures. I had a book that showed the features that they show with Polina Zalitsky, which shows a Cuban cave and has this really complicated concentric elliptical things with what appear to be the planets of the solar system. The intriguing thing is that they're ellipses also, and they seem to show a heliocentric universe. The really strange thing is it's that of people that are regarded as being extremely primitive, the Siboney or the Siboney, who were in the Bahamas but left almost nothing of material culture. This is very sophisticated. It shows an arrow going like out from the direction of the sun, suggesting a comet or something or some major disaster. We can go ahead. Oh yeah, here you can see a little bit closer, like a little, almost like a crude face. I left that there, unfortunately, and it's gone. Okay. This is actually a blue-green thing. This is the area where the rectangle is. I don't think that it actually shows the entire thing right here. Okay, next. This is one of the stones David Zink found. It was clearly carved, and this was marble. This was on the Bimini Road. You see this little marks right down here, too. Okay. And that's it. It's weighed about 200 pounds, so it's up on the boat right there. Basically, so far we've found, aside from variations of different limestone, we found granite, limestone, marble, and biosparite type of marble. Okay. Oh, yeah, marble is found in certain types of environments. It's kind of unusual to find it here. Now, some of this is that's North Bimini. Go. It's basically what the type of stuff that we found that was different. The black stuff, the gray marble, the biosparite, is not native to Bimini. It's from the other side of the Bahamas. And it looks like black granite up close. In fact, two geologists looking at it said that it was that way, so I said it looks like something related to granite. It was missing mica, otherwise it would have been granite. So at any rate, it's very unusual. And what we found, it was a stone that I found on the road. I signaled to Greg and Laura. Laura spends a huge amount of time in the water, like part mermaid. She does stuff on the surface, Greg goes down there. And it was a flat stone that was under other stones, which made it interesting. And Greg starts digging, and he starts bringing out these black stones, some of which are here, and I'll show you. And I wrote down on the slate, these are all artifacts. And one of them shaped kind of like a big doorstop, one was like a cut brick. And it seemed to be, and then I saw it was on the other side and behind me. I've never seen these before at all. Fill, like we would put in some of the harbor works here around LA. And it was absolutely not related to the geological contiguity. In fact, adjacent stones can have different crystallization, aragonite or calcite. So the arguments are ridiculous. Now, Shen had said that in his own work that 25% of his 2-inch corings showed bedding planes. When he did the Nature article, he said all of them did, which is not true. Now he's saying that you can't determine that from 2-inch corings, which makes that kind of an interesting non-argument. They did bulk dating of radiocarbon things, giving dates of like 3000 BC, which they're saying, oh, it's nowhere near Atlantis. Well, number one, it was done by a student. And you can't determine anything because the bulk dating will give you an average. There were stones that were 200,000 years old off of South Bimini. It was just really a bad system. They didn't take it seriously, yet everybody has cited this particular thing. Skeptical Inquirer was never skeptical of people that supported that position, only the other one. The fact that there are different types of stones, that they're not even associated, it shows that their argument is utterly bogus, and it's like, what does he have now that actually is even valid? Yet people are still citing this. In fact, Greg saw him on a computer program, and he actually stopped before he got to this particular point, but then he repeated exactly the same thing. He wasn't even a geologist when he looked at this stuff in the 70s. He was a biologist. Okay, let's go on. We got a lot more of these. I'm going to probably skip a few. That's North Bimini. It's way changed way up at the northern end now. It's probably good. That's the people, that's David Zink there, Joan Hanley, Banda Osmo, we've all been the people that have been mainly involved in this stuff for the last couple of years. Zink did Stones of Atlantis, which he actually redid in the 90s. I helped him getting some things on metrology. Okay. This is South Bimini, North Bimini. The Bimini Road to be right up in this vicinity. Okay. That basically right here, in fact, this is actually a good one. This is called the Three Sisters, or coral heads. One of the artifacts was found inside the little tunnel that goes through here, which people are saying, oh, they just dropped stuff over the Bimini Road, because people were admitting real artifacts. They're just saying, oh, they're not from here, and that's just wrong. The new feature is actually right here, about 50 yards offshore, and I had estimated it was about 300 feet long. Greg thought it was more like 200 yards long, and it appears to be a megalithic pier. It's built up, and you see the stone patterns and everything. Okay. East Bimini, move along. You know, if you want to, I can do this a lot quicker. Yeah.
Well, you need to be up there for the video, so I'll just...
Oh, okay.
I'll handle it.
Okay. Okay, go. That's south and you can go. South and you go. A lot of fish, go. This was when we were first going over. This is the man right here, Raymond Lee, who did the aerial infrareds that showed that there was not just one or two mounds, there was a whole mound complex. There was a shark, or a fish, whichever you want to call it, a leaping cat, a rectangle, what appeared to be like a bell jar, and then up above there was an upside-down dolphin, very large, a pollywog, and then across the channel, one that he and I found independently from his photos of a, looks like a cobra. Now there's actually an animal in Bimini which mimics a cobra. We almost stepped on the poor thing. It was a big snake and its neck fanned out, and I thought, if this is mimicking a cobra at some time in antiquity, it had to have been associated with a place which was a cobra, which is Africa, which can be the land bridge thing. Okay. Go. Okay, that's the first year out there, go. That's Paradise Point right there. This was actually taken with a 110 underwater camera. It's probably fragments of something, and you can see parts of them here. There are 3 fragments of it. Okay. Bimini Road, not real clear, but you see some of the big stones here. By the way, the Bimini Road is not beach rock for a couple of reasons. For one thing, it's 7 degrees out of alignment. There's 2 parts. The J and inward of that are parallel lines we call Rebekov's pier. They're both 7 degrees out of alignment. 7 degrees here and 7 degrees here. That's pretty remote that you'd have that by accident, too. Okay. Yeah, you can just keep going through here. That's okay. You get stuck somewhere. Okay, it's upside down. You can see the parallel areas between the stones right here. Okay. Go. That's a little bit there. That's an anchor line. You can see some of the alignments right here, okay? Okay, yeah, just keep going. It's okay. The more interesting ones right here, okay? Get an idea of size right here. Some of these are about 4 feet or 8 feet. Other ones are as long as 16. And this last time we went there, an archaeologist was with me. Her name was Juliet Michael. We were swimming along the edge, and apparently the boat people were getting bugged because they couldn't see our bubbles, and we'd gone a mile past the Bimini Road, yet I was still finding big stones here. One was like about 20 feet square. Okay. You can see a little bit better alignments right here. And also, they'll have smaller stones that make up the space between them. Okay. Yeah, just keep going. Okay. Right here. The angle orientations. Okay, these are actually early ones from the 90s, so they're a little bit different now. See the nice alignment here. A boat tried to pull up one of these. This is a little bit faint, but you can see some of this. Okay. And it didn't really capsize the boat. They estimated it weighed probably about 10 tons. A little bit better pictures there. By the way, what you're seeing is not the stones themselves. These are pillow type ones. It's about 1 inch of material of sand and marine growth. The stuff that's actually under the sand is almost white. Looks very nice. Looks a lot like the Peruvian things. Okay. Beach rock does go into some of these particular things, but not just regular. There's some interesting hexagonal stones. So you see these are right angle things that are a little bit rounded. This one's interesting. This was probably something that once stood upright, these 3 pieces here. It would basically would have stood up almost like an inverted Minoan column. It would have been about 16 feet high. Zink found one also on another part of the Bimini Road that's almost identical. That's a sideways view of it. That's a little bit closer. Okay. Okay, there's a little bit of pattern here. Yeah, go. You can see there's a lot of these rectilinear formations. Oh, one thing that I discovered this last time out with Greg and June was that we were going to bring up, because we did the TV program, the Atlantis one, the new evidence thing, which appeared in, I think, July. He wanted, because we didn't get to do what we wanted to. The science fiction channel is owned by NBC, and we didn't get to spend a day more we wanted to at Anguilla or at Bimini, so we went back. And He had pointed out one of the stones and went like this, that in order to do a measurement, which I did. And then we brought 2 other ones on board, which were different quality limestones significantly, and I measured them. Later on in the evening, one that we pulled up and one that was below the surface was exactly 23.5 inches in a measurement, so there's a standard unit of measurement also. Okay. And again, more of this stuff. You can just keep going through it. I'll tell you when to stop. This is an interesting one. It's almost like steps right here on both sides going up. I've never been able to find this area again. Okay. I'm not sure. Okay. Notice this hexagonal one right here. Okay. This is what's called a ghost pattern. There actually isn't anything here. It's what's left over from a stone that was apparently decomposed. Okay. And some more. I'm not even sure if that one's on the Bimini Road. Let's see what the next one is. Not sure. Okay. It's in the same vicinity. Oh, this is the area where Zink's people found it. It's about 15 feet. You can actually swim through here, but not with a tank. And this is where this Navy SEALs found this particular artifact. One of them was divisible by 10 on all of its dimensions. Okay. That's us going to the mounds the first time. Okay. That's Doug Richards and Joan Hanley. That's my blood. There was a whole lot of it. Had a little accident with the machete. It went into the side of my foot. I ended up getting 5 stitches. And I like this one because it's a macho picture. You know. That's me. The funny thing is that we used to wear a lot of camouflage. The girls would always wear hot pink. So it's like there's some weird Mars-Venus thing going on here. The guys don't want to be found. The women do. Okay. That was on the mounds right here. This is the rectangular mound. That's von Osmond, who involved from the beginning. This is a well that's no longer there. It has fresh water. It's called the Pirate's Well. They would go by there. Morgan the Pirate was actually a little bit to the south there and probably buried some treasure. Okay. This is the healing hole. You can see it's kind of bubbling up here. The water table is really high. Some people call this, actually this isn't the healing hole. It's what they call the fountain of youth. I would never drink this stuff. There's like insect larvae and all this weird stuff in there. They actually used it to there. This is actually what the people built on so the water could actually irrigate in the 1800s. Okay. This is important, by the way, because it relates to the strata removed offshore, which shows that the same principle was going there, that you could get fresh water simply by going beneath it. Nicholas, right here, Popov, was working with the Rebakovs. This is all of us at the healing hole, which apparently at one time had a lot of lithium, in fact, more than any other place on Earth. Now it doesn't seem to be coming in at all. It has very high concentrations of sulfur. It'll change copper, silver, brass to colors in just minutes. Okay. When the lithium was there, people got real giggly. That's where they are, okay. It's kind of a creepy looking place, actually. You can see the things, these have all turned colors because of the chemical things. Casey had said specifically that there would be sulfur waters on the southern part of the North Island, which is exactly where this is. I had Delmar Analytical take a look at it, and it was like 10 to 100 times more than it was on the other part, so it was significant. Okay. That's actually a mound. There are Indian things that have been found there. That's Ashley Saunders' class, okay. There's a snake in there. Standing some stuff there. The people in ancient times, at least the Indians, seem to spend more time on this. Oh, this is one of the snakes. Before it fanned out its neck. Okay. That's another mound that I found on the part of the island, more like a midden on the northern part of North Bimini. Okay. This is some places that are just like Gun Key and a few other ones where you see a lot of this stuff. It's hardly one's view of Lost or anything else. This is a ship that's Sapona, which enters in very definitely to the Bermuda Triangle thing. They were actually going out to do test bombings on this thing, which was a concrete ship from World War I. Some strange person wanted to actually put a casino on top. I can imagine what happens the first hurricane they have. You can find a lot of big bullets around there if you dive there. Okay. This is one of the interesting features. There is a feature off Bimini that's shaped like a human foot. I've seen Manson Valentine's photo, and it turns out, this is really bizarre, looks like a human foot. It's actually made of magnetite sand, which forms into geometric patterns. Magnetite sand is sometimes associated with gold. Telluride has also been found on Bimini, which is also associated with gold, and not with a typical carbon environment. Okay. This is just a step that goes off naturally off the northern part of Bimini, but it looks very interesting. This actually gets deeper as you go on the northern part of Bimini. It gets incredibly shallow to the east. And you can actually see the layers of geological history there. Okay, I don't know what that is. The water. This is actually near the mound areas, but it's not really showing much of them. Okay.
This was really weird. This was the mangrove, but it appears like it's growing in mines and stuff, which is really strange if you think that nobody's planting this stuff out there. Okay. One of the things you can find sites at is, of course, is vegetation pattern alterations. That's why we're looking at the underwater side. This is actually the fish mound. This is in infrared, by the way, right here. This is 4 or 529 feet from nose to tail. This is the other one right here, and you can barely see the rectangle up here. Okay. This is one of the other mounds. This one didn't appear to have much of a shape. This was actually on the surface there. Something had cut down into the rock, which was, it could have been modern. I don't know. I just took a picture. We document everything. Okay. Another of the mounds right here. And some more right here. So we should have some better ones up here pretty soon. Okay, that's the Three Sisters again. That's a boat. It looked like a big eye. It turns out that this is how the sand forms around us, so we, learn what is and what isn't important stuff. Okay, you can keep on going. It's the interesting topography. Okay, here's the fish again. You can see the plane. This is the fin. And the other one right there, okay. That's one of the mounds, but you can't really see. It's kind of hard. This plane is not the best for doing that, okay. Another one. Raymondly, okay, that's before they went to the mound. That plane was actually owned by Eisenhower. It was Rebekov's plane at one time, and okay. Oh, yeah. Oh, good. We should probably skip a few of these. So let's skip, 2 and 3, and what do we have after that? Yeah, a lot of the same on that. And that was just like the first year that we did stuff, so I wanted that one in there. Let's try 4. I'm hoping that there'll be one that shows the, probably missed that one, that has the seahorse mound, which I discovered. And that's an interesting story in itself. I'd had this unusual dream. And when we'd first come to Bimini on the big boat, you'd come across on a smaller boat from there because it couldn't get in. In the dream, I'm at a computer access door terminal, and I type in Bill with 1 L, Access Infinity, and Atlan. Then the next image, I'm on a dock. There's this beautiful white-winged seahorse statue on a pedestal, and a character that's behind me is like a statue. Maybe it's Atlan, I don't know. And it's indicating that there are records in the base of this thing. The intriguing thing is I kept looking after that dream to see if there was something like a white-winged seahorse. I saw it on a boat and thought, well, that's interesting. Then it turned out that when we were flying over, I discovered a mound that was a white seahorse. And it was from the air, so it kind of went together. So if that's true, if we can do ground penetration radar, we might find something really interesting, because this was specifically related to Atlantis and records and so on. But that's the reason that one was discovered. Okay, this is just a map showing part of the areas that's, I think we saw. Yeah, right here. Okay. And Anguilla Cave, which is on that. This is where there's an Anguilla Arc. It's a semicircle of stones. It actually comes within 1 foot of the surface when it's far out there. So it was a definitely protected area. Okay. Okay. I'm not sure where this one's at. Let's go. It might be. Okay, keep going. Okay, I think this is probably Anguilla Cave right here. Okay. Yeah, looks like it. Okay, keep going. Yeah, you see the same similarity to the Bimini stuff. Okay. Again, the nice patterns there. And the stuff right here. Okay. And same thing. Okay, keep going. Different levels here. Okay. Yeah, this is definitely Anguilla Cave. You can see some of this. Some of this could very well be natural. This is one of the people that was with us on the boat in '98. Okay. Again, same area. So you see, you take pictures like Doug Richards says. You'll take one picture of Bimini Road, looks terrible, another looks really great. That's Jonathan Eagle right there, over some of the same features. Notice this right here, kind of interesting, and these patterns. This one's actually a multiple feature thing. It's just a bunch of rocks, but again, if we're talking about harbor works, all you have to do is dump a bunch of rocks there in order to use it for anything. Okay. Not sure that one. Oh, this is a triple feature Donnie Fields found, late Donnie Fields, which was one thing that totally was, they said that the Bimini Road was one layer. It's not one layer, it's several layers, at least on the J, okay. And she's using a fluorescent marker. It was really bad visibility that particular day. We did find that, and the intriguing thing, the middle stone is the most artificial of all of them. Okay, let's see. This is one of the coring holes right here that was done. They hold up pretty well. Right here's what we're looking at. Again, this is Bimini Road, that's the J. Oh, this is that feature which comes off the northern part, okay. Oh, I'm sorry, here it is. This is the rectangle right here. This is why we were interested in it. You can also see a small pentagonal form right here. On the inside here, the strata is totally gone, but it follows natural contours on the outside. And again, if the strata is down at that 20-foot level, it's really ancient. Oh, good, we're done? Okay, good. Oh, okay. Let's see, unusual feature right here. This is from the air, by the way. Oh, this is actually in the northern part of Bimini. You see, this is actually a bit different from the beach rock, and this is actually more like the stone in the Bimini Road, as if it's regular limestone that's been cut up. Okay. This is no longer here. The weather has destroyed this entire thing. It was a gazebo connected to the shore. This is Paradise Point, and it is out here actually it's a little bit more in that direction where the pier is. Okay. A big fish that was caught right off the gate. It's called a permit. That's Donnie's husband. Okay. Yeah, that's the boat that we were using for research. Okay, Sea Spirit. This is the submarine we used in '98. It's a Necton Gamma. That's Tom Vanderveer. Tom Vanderveer was involved with the Decca Corporation in something really interesting. It was they were trailing a camera at 6,000 feet in the Peru Trench, and they came across what looked like 3 buildings at 6,000 feet, one of which had columns in front, and it's probably on the film somewhere. The Anton Brunet also had something that looked like a column on the other side. Okay. That's a side-scan torpedo right there. They're not too big. This is one of the boats we had for the, I think for the submarine. Okay. There it is, a moving arm and all that. If you're claustrophobic, this is the worst place, but it's actually really nice to, like moving in a bubble. Okay. There we go. Yeah, you can just keep going. I'm going to get through the other one after this. I don't know what that is. Oh, this might have been taken from the submarine. One thing I noticed at 110 was that I saw these patterns of vegetation and sand that were like square. This had no meaning at all until the tech divers that Joan Henley had in '98 were going down significantly deep, and they found what appeared to be like trails that you'd have on the surface through mountains with these little things that go back and forth, and rectangular and square patterns. And it turns out that if these could be remnants of things that literally are, or the remnants, the shadows, if you will, of things that were around 10,000 BC or so. I don't think that one's it, but it's in places that are spread out. So you have Bimini and also at Gun Key, which is some miles to the south. Okay. Yeah, okay, go. Shows how shallow it is. Okay, this is actually part of a keel of a boat that was there. This was uncovered by the weather. The maps of Bimini are now no longer accurate. That's part of it. Okay, this is fairly new. Very big spikes. It's kind of dangerous there. Okay, that's one of them. So you got a whole range of things. That's our whole group. We're staying at Ellis Cottages on the Sea. Okay. Bimini. Okay, good. Are we at the end of that one? Good. I want to get through the last. We have 1 or 2 more.
2 more slides or 2 more
Trays.
Unfortunately, I think we have to wrap it up.
Okay, how about the last tray? It's not full. It's about half. Okay. This is new stuff. If you're more interested, though, in the other stuff, there's some Peruvian and other stuff. It depends.
What do you guys want to hear about? Atlantis? Atlantis? Okay.
There's some cool stuff on Peru and Mexico. Okay. 6 is the newest one. Yeah, these. Yeah, since I paid $300 to get 50 slides, I should probably show these. I don't know what's with slides. It used to be like $1 or $2, and now they have to send them to Georgia, and they cost $5.99 a slide. These will be some from Tampa. It turns out man, John Saxer, had these very interesting stones, which looked like our anchors, but they were far bigger. This is one of the artifacts I have with me right here if you want to take a look afterwards. It was cut. This is on the outer edge of the J. This is clearly cut. Found this one. This looked like a Roman toilet to me, actually, on the curve of the J of the Bimini Road. That was discovered in May. Other nice little rectilinear formations. This is the stuff we pulled up, the black stones right here. There was a lot of them. There's like 75 pounds of these. And that's the stone where they were along the edge. Okay. It was on 5505 if you're into numerology. This is at Andros. Right here, you can see the same patterns right here. Okay. Again, Andros. This is relatively shallow. It's like 8 to 10 feet deep. It's,
Those megalithic, can't tell the scale.
yeah, this would probably be, I don't know, like 6 feet or so right here. Probably less than a foot across here. I can't really tell on that particular one. These would be, let's say maybe 6 feet, maybe 8 or so feet. So they're on a pretty good size scale. You can see the lines here. Okay. These are fairly new. Oh, this is a really interesting one here. You see the way the angles are going here. And it's really shallow. This is some of the artifacts. That's, again, one of them, giving you a scale. I have it here if you want to see so afterward. Okay. Some of the other ones, these are the ones we pulled out, the black stuff. Greg has this one. I have these two. Underwater, you see this nice, well-cut stone here, right here, that part, broken. This is one of the anchors on the Bimini Road. Apparently, this one is closer to a Minoan anchor, which is kind of interesting. Laura saw this while we were looking at that toilet-like, seat-like thing. Okay. This is interesting to me because it shows the 3 stones falling over that are underneath this big one here, which are apparently supporting, some of which are rectangular. This is the Lucayan anchor from 1380 AD. You see all the holes here that were connected on the inside, okay? This is on Land's End on the Little Bahama Bank, and this was a perfect circular hole, about 6 inches, and it's broken here. I think you see more in the next one. Yeah, right here. You can see this is an absolutely perfect hole. Okay. This is the big anchor, the one that looks like a Carthaginian one. There's the hole right there. This weighed about 400 pounds, and it was quite interesting. We're pulling it up, and Esley says, oh, let's make a good anchor as a boat's going like this. Okay. Let's see. This is at Angelicae. You see these nice, very close patterns along here. Okay. This is also at Angelicae. It looks a lot like Bimini. Also at Angelicae. Right here. You see the very tight. These are less disturbed. The Bimini Road was apparently in the 20s and 30s. People were taking stones off it to build up the jetties in Florida. And I don't blame them. They couldn't have known what it was. Okay. This is in Florida. This is big enough to put a volleyball through. It's very interesting. It resembled the anchors, but it may have been for some other reasons, okay? This is the unusual one. This was 6 feet high, 12 feet long, and it was going into the ground. They even have a place called Indian Rock Road. These are spread out all over, and there's not a single source of stone that I could find. There are various rope grooves that go around these circles. I think one's about 17 and one's about 15 inches. And you can see some of the lines here from the rope grooves that have been about 2 inches thick. So they asked me if it was an anchor, what it'd be for. I says, oh, I don't know, something like a destroyer, because it's a pretty good size piece of rock. It's more likely it may have been used as a mooring stone if there was anything there, but there are quite a few of them, and there are different types of stone. This one we couldn't date because there was no organic material in it. Okay. They also have these carved faces there. This is one of them. I think the next 2 slides are the same thing. Probably from the mound builder period. There's a lot of communication. They even had things that looked Olmec and Mayan. See right there and right there. Okay. Close up. First it looked kind of Celtic. Now this one's on the beach. This is an absolutely dead perfect hole on this one. Almost like a pipe had gone through it. Have no idea what the thing was for. Okay. Maybe astronomical sighting. These, if you're wondering, are apparently anchors. You see the holes in the things. Okay. That's on Proctor's Road, so is this right here, and you see some kind of unusual markings there, okay? This is one of the leveling stones right here. It actually is kind of triangular shaped. Right up here, this one is actually half of a leveling stone because Greg broke the sample. It's kind of an interesting shape, but basically you can see the shape of it. It is wedge shaped, and that's exactly what it's for. The other stone is up here. You can go on to the next one. Oh, okay. You see again these nice rectangular cut stones and very nicely cut ones that are. This particular stone is on the outer edge of the J, and it's a rhombus shape. It's one that I could actually carry. Most of these things are really small. This is from 1993. Okay. I think that, this is the Paradise Point here, the new stuff, I think, so let's keep going. You'll notice things like this. Yeah, okay, see, this is the new site. There's absolutely no doubt this stuff is artifactual. You can see some of the patterns here. In the newer pictures, you can see whole areas, again, right here, right-angled features. That's it?
No.
Oh. This one was really interesting. You see the two holes here in this very definite groove thing, and I'd figured if this was a pier, there'd have to be anchors, and on the south side where the current flows, we found a lot of anchors. This is a very big one. You can see some of the things here, and this terrible ocean creature that's... this is really weird. When we'd been there that day, it was related to a dream. It turns out that Andrew Collins, who had written the book Gateway to Atlantis, was there. I'd met him. He was on our expedition 98. Really good observer. He had a dream that he was like underwater and saw a tree. Well, on this particular day when it verified my dream, there was this tree that was underwater here on the same feature. It was like two particular dreams that were the same area. And these are the stones, of course. That one had to be there. And of course, you see again the patterns of stones, even more obvious than some of the Bimini Road ones. Okay. Real nice right here. I think we're almost done. There we go. And this one we actually cleared this, Juliet and I cleared the sand. You can see that this is, what you find is things that are actually under the sand are very well protected. The organisms eat right into the rock. You can tell on that one right there if you look at it. Some that were at the end of one of the features on the road, I dug and it was like perfectly clean. You know, it was almost like a Mayan white sock base. But anyway, this is one of the more interesting ones. Okay. This one is blurry because the picture is blurry. I'd heard people saying that there was an arch that was north of Bimini. There is not really an arch, it's what's called an architrave. In a Greek column, you have the columns, and the thing that goes right on top of it supports the roofs is an architrave. This is an architrave. It is not ancient. Some people were trying to claim it was. It is marble. I have a sample of it. It's about 11 miles north of Bimini. And there had been columns. What Krista had told me was that there were things that looked like tombstones. And I thought, this looks like something that would have been from like a funeral place or a mortuary place. And that's probably what it was from. It wasn't anywhere near ancient, but while we're going down, I see these two big shark tails out from under these things like this. And I keep going like this, and nobody's paying any attention to me whatsoever. Then Krista goes over and really starts yanking on the tail of this one to get it moving. She says, well, I thought you wanted to take a picture later on. And I think, no, it's okay. It turned out they were nurse sharks, which are not dangerous. You can do a lot with them. But one of them was like 8 feet long, you know, kind of this weird gray, green color. But this one, it didn't come out, but I just wanted to have it. It was the only picture I have of that particular feature. Okay. Probably the Bimini Road. There's a place called Moselle Shoals, which is probably in the other ones, which has huge blocks of granite that are unbelievably big. Okay. Bimini Road, these are some of those rectangular slabs.
Bill, we're coming up on 11 o'clock.
We are.
So
Is that it?
we're supposed to be out.
Okay, those are some of the anchors, and I have those if anybody wants to look at them. You see the rope grooves right here, something we're doing.
Good.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, Bill, thank you so much.
All right, guys.